Hello and welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Gibbon podcast. On this one, we are going to talk to Marc. He was a vegan. He's kind of bouncing between the two, but it's an interesting conversation and I hope you enjoy it. Again, I've blinked and all of a sudden we are at the end of June. I don't know how this happened. I think the last time I spoke to you all, I was sat in a hotel room in the wonderful city of Lithuania. I was just on the Pulsar Pro staff meeting, and all of a sudden that feels like it was yesterday, but actually it was over 6 weeks ago. Time is flying by. I suppose with all the stuff that's going on in my life, everything has been a bit manic. But it's the Scottish Game Fair. It is literally round the corner. It's 3 days away. So I will be heading down there, and in some fantastic news, I didn't even know this was happening. I have been nominated for an award. It's the Influencer of 2026. It's with the Scottish Country Tourism Awards in association with Basque. I didn't even know that I'd been nominated. So whoever nominated me, all the people that nominated, thank you ever so much, because obviously I got shortlisted. There are 4 super contenders nominated for this, all with an individual skill that is brilliant. But it's so nice that the Outdoor Gibbon podcast has been recognised for what it does. Sharing knowledge about Scotland, sharing knowledge about stalking, hunting, all of that stuff. So again, thank you ever so much for the people, you guys that have put me forward. That's all I can say. Where are we in the year? That's the usual thing I bring up. Well, it's striving ahead. It's almost coming, midsummer almost. We've had the longest day. The days are drawing in. It's crazy. I haven't been out properly for Roebuck. My plan is, after I've recorded this podcast, I'm actually heading out to see whether I can find anything. The cover is incredibly high. It's going to be a challenge. The weather's been wild. I was down in London last week, 40-degree temperatures. Back up here, it's a pleasant 24 today. Again, we've just had a huge, massive downpour of rain. So it's all over the place. We're definitely not suffering the temperatures you guys are down south, or wherever you're listening in the world. You might be even hotter than we are. But we've had some scorching temperatures within the UK. I don't know what that's doing to deer movement. It would be really interesting to find out. I know I tried going stalking while I was in the south of England, and it was horrendous. I had horseflies all over me. Trying to wear a t-shirt wasn't the best plan. I wasn't really geared up for it. I did see a badger literally walk in front of me about 5 yards. He was obviously hot because he went to the river. So it's just absolutely crazy. But the season is racing by. We've got to get our pheasant pen ready for our poults to come in. I was literally looking at the diary and looking at pre-recordings and old recordings and stuff like that, and I literally can't believe that 12 months has come round. This time last year I was gearing up to go to Scone to do a load of recordings for the GWCT. I do have some of them. I am still trying to clean up the audio because unfortunately the PA system down there was absolutely dreadful, and trying to record stuff off microphones through their PA, etc., it really didn't work. Hopefully at some point when I actually manage to get those fully cleaned up, we'll be able to bring those podcasts to you. However, we have got all of the content from the stalking show to come, so that should hopefully be something that's really interesting. We've still got to get a few of those chats, especially the head shooting one, approved, and hopefully they're happy for it to go out, and then you can all catch up on that. Watch this space. What are we going to be doing later on in the year? Well, August is not far away. It's the start of the season. I can't believe it is just this year. This year is a blur, but we'll write 2026 off. 27 will be a completely different game changer of a year and everything going forward. So watch what's going to happen. Let's get on and have a listen to this podcast that I recorded back in March with a friend of mine from university called Marc. He went down the vegan route, vegetarian, meat eating. It's a very interesting conversation about his journey and where he is, but it's not sort of a debate. We've talked about many things, but I'd love to, if there's any feedback or anybody has anything to say, shoot it over, stick us a couple of questions, bang it into the comments, whatever you want to do, but I'd love to hear more. But I'll stop waffling now. We'll go on and have a listen, and I'll catch you at the end. The Outdoor Given podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy, an online training platform and UK registered learning provider that provides a host of accredited and nationally available courses and masterclasses delivered by leading industry experts.
Hi guys, it's Rachel here from Style, the new social app for field sports and farming. Join our countryside community on the App Store or Google Play. Just search Style Country. Enjoy the show.
Another episode of the Outdoor Given podcast. Today I'm joined by an old friend of mine, Marc. We go probably back about 20 years from a time when we were both students back in Loughborough in an Ents department. I think that's about right, isn't it?
20 years. Oh God, 20 years.
Well, it's probably
Yes.
even more than that, but it is about 20 years. It was when time was, I thought I was sitting here writing notes thinking 20 plus years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, it would have been. I left Loughborough in 2007. I worked at the student union from 2005 to 2004 to 2007. I was assistant entertainment manager. I booked bands. I organised the flyering. I got pissed and DJ'd twice a week, and it was one of the most fun jobs I've ever had in my life.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was the monkey putting all the lights up, making it flash and do things like that. And so that takes us where we've got to. Obviously, we've both gone in different directions and different things in life. And I think, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do now?
Well, I think the main difference between us is I've stayed mostly indoors. That is.
Yes, yeah.
Basically, so these days I am an author. I'm a writer. I write books. I write biographies. I've written a biography of Sir Terry Pratchett. I've written books about Mark Bolan and David Bowie's friendship in the 60s. I've written a book about Nirvana. I wrote a book about Christmas number ones that came out last year that was in itself a Christmas number one. My book on Christmas number ones became Christmas number one. Admittedly,
Fantastic.
It was Christmas number one on the Amazon Kindle chart for music history and criticism, but you know that is still a chart, and I still topped it on Christmas Day. So that's that, and I'll take that to my grave. And then on top of that, I'm a comedian. I do stand-up comedy. I tend to turn the books I've written into stand-up shows, kind of comedy lectures almost, and I tour them around the country. I do the Edinburgh Festival, and between that I do bits and bobs of journalism and columns and writing and anything that anyone will pay me for that doesn't involve having to get a real job.
I like that. It's kind of like mine. I've kind of got that real job being self-employed, but also obviously enjoy all this other stuff that I get up to, as everybody that will be listening to this knows. So this is why we've brought this conversation together, because we're probably from now probably as far apart as you probably could be in terms of the different things that we do. But the reason I came to you to have a chat was I think you had a different journey, and it's one of those topics that comes up so often, and I think it's become sort of mainstream media love it, and it's that word vegan, and you did branch off down that line. But we'll come back to what's happened there. But can you just kind of tell me why you headed off down that route?
So yeah, I mean, I was vegan. I'm not anymore, and we'll talk about that later. And you're right, it's toxic. And I remember once I tried not to have an argument about it. It was on your Facebook page, and somebody mentioned it, and I tried to be like, okay, I'm going to be reasonable, and I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be like, you know what? It's up to you. Everyone makes their own decisions. These are my reasons, and I think there were people who were reading it who just almost saw the answers they wanted to see rather than the answers I was actually giving, because I was trying to be really calm about it, and then people were getting really angry and irate. My journey to veganism was pretty simple. I'd been vegetarian on and off since I was quite a small child. I had a couple of years of being a vegetarian when I was very young, like 7, 8 years old, but couldn't keep it up because school dinners were terrible. I grew up working class in Leicestershire, and I didn't go to a school with particularly good school dinners, and it was either really bland pat lunches or really terrible school dinner food. And in the end, it just broke me. And
Yep.
one day my mum was cooking macaroni and cheese, but she always used to put bacon in it, and she'd always do one for me that didn't have bacon in it. And I just came in one day, just really had a really miserable cheese pie for my dinner, and the bacon smelled amazing. And she was like, "Do you want some bacon in your macaroni?" And I was like, "Yes, please." Yeah. But I returned to it later because I've always fundamentally been uncomfortable with the idea that something has to die for me to eat it.
Okay.
And that it comes down to that, really. It's like and this is why I get uncomfortable with talking about it, because I have to hold these two ideas in my head. One, that I'm uncomfortable with the idea that something has to die in order for me to eat, and on the other hand, that I do it anyway. And those two, that's a conflict that I've constantly got in my head. So at the time, I was in a band with a guy who was a very militant vegan. I'm not saying I let him sort of propagandize me a bit, but the subject came up a lot, and I agreed with almost everything he ever said, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, I agree with all these things. Like, I do agree that stuff that sort of sentient beings that can think and feel shouldn't have to be killed for me to eat, when there are other ways to eat that are, especially in this day and age, completely satisfying and delicious. Like, that was the problem 20 years ago. It's much easier to be vegan now because there's loads of great vegan options, and um some of them are so lifelike that I know. My girlfriend is vegetarian. My fiance is vegetarian. Has never been vegetarian since she was very, very little, and can't eat a lot of sort of fake meat substitutes because she finds them too realistic. Whereas I love the fact that there are now realistic fake meat substitutes, because it means I can eat something that feels satisfying without the guilt. Anyway, so yeah, I just got to the point where uh, all of these facts and figures and things where I was like, and just these basic simple ideas I agreed with, and I was like, I can't agree with this and still eat meat and still eat and still eat eggs and cheese and stuff. So in the end, I went vegan. I thought I'll try it for a month, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And I just thought, I'm just going to carry on. And I'm not preachy about it. I try not to be preachy about it because I think everyone makes their own choices. I think it's, and also in an ideal world, like, it's the mechanization and the industrialization that I'm uncomfortable with more than
Yeah, no,
anything else.
I would agree. I would agree with you on that. And what was really interesting is let's just jump back. I remember that your chat on my Facebook page, and how very much it's almost embarrassing to think that people jump on there straight away. And the word you put that up, and I'd seen you pop in and put your comment on, and how you, exactly as you said, you kind of almost got the attack because people, that it's a strange one, isn't it? It's the meat eaters and all the rest of it have one view, and the way I think the press throw it out there doesn't give it a good spin, and everybody kind of butts heads. But actually, when you sit down and have a chat with people, and you get to hear the reasons, I think some people do it purely because, exactly like yours, you have a you've got it, that you don't want a sentient being, an animal or something like that, to have to die to feed you. Brilliant. But as you say, you were with a former band member who was that sort of militant vegan that was out there to sort of was preach that to everybody.
Yeah, very much so. And he had like an animal rights background, and thing is, I didn't disagree with anything he said. He went a bit hard for me a lot of the time, but I didn't disagree with what he was saying. And actually, that's what I was saying, that it's not just about something has to die for me to eat. It's also the industrialization and the mechanization of it. It's that these are huge scale, huge capitalist businesses, in which animals are treated as product, and are treated almost as if they're not alive. And there are better ways of doing it, and I think I would probably happily not even bother about being vegan if all if everything was bought from a nice lovely little farm shop, and it was all like super sustainable, and and everything is not just free range but free roaming and all that kind of thing, I would make me feel a lot more comfortable, I think. But it's the kind of the sort of mechanization, industrialization, full on capitalist process of it all that also makes me feel uncomfortable.
As from a completely different side of the spectrum to you, obviously as a meat eater, but as a hunter, I completely agree with you. And I think that's where there is a common ground where we should all stand, because it was only yesterday. Yesterday, I think I was chatting to a friend of mine about this, and you're sat there and if you can do the traceability of the piece of whatever you're eating, I think that's really important. And the comment comes out is, you get a lot of people will turn around, and it's not obviously just the vegetarians, the vegans, it's even the meat eaters that we have that discussion with about, would you be able to, let's throw it down there, could you go out and hunt or take the life of what you're eating? And if the answer comes back as no, then you shouldn't be eating it. In some ways is the way I look at it. It's that responsibility for what you're about to eat, and it goes through anything. It's like, if you're going to have, I don't know, any product, you kind of need to know where it's come from, because you've just said the big industrialization, this whole thing, you don't know what's going into your food anymore in many ways.
Absolutely, and that's true of many plant-based products as well. That's not like a lot of that's not just restricted to
No.
animal products. It's just animal products have a particularly animal products include something that suffers pain as well in that mix, so it just makes it worse. But actually, sustainable food is a huge thing, and I think it's something we all should take more seriously, and not just from a health point of view, from an environmental point of view, all of that sort of stuff. But we don't live in a time that's as simple as that. We just don't. It's really hard to know that. Like 200 years ago, that would be easy, but 200 years ago, those kind of high yield, extremely mechanized, extremely industrialized processes didn't exist. But 200 years ago, we had a smaller population and to feed, and there's loads of different things. This is an incredibly complicated issue, and it's incredibly complicated for loads of reasons. And I don't need to tell you all this because you all know it, it all. But it's complicated from a social point of view, because we spend our entire lives being trained to understand certain ideas, and then to unpick those and to step aside from them is difficult. It's a really difficult thing to do, because we are trained from birth by all of the things we learn and all the media we consume to understand things simply, and it's difficult because we don't know these processes. It's and there's a distance between the food that's on your table and the origin of that food that is an intellectual thing that we do not know the process, and we don't think about it. Maybe that feels more comfortable, it feels better, and I'm as guilty about this as anyone. All of this stuff I know intellectually, but really struggle to unpick in a way that makes me hypocritical, because I am as guilty as anybody, and I know all this stuff. Maybe that's worse, that I know all this stuff and I've done this research, and I often still do eat these things anyway. But it's a lot to unpick and a lot to unprogram, and I don't think any of us really has it in us to do that. Because
no, I completely agree, because I've got a friend who's actually completely the opposite to obviously being a vegan, and she works on the carnivore diet. She only eats meat. Now that's a completely different story altogether, but we won't come on to that one just yet. But again, that's two ends of the spectrum. But just going back to your journey as a vegan, did you have any health issues? Was there anything you were struggling with, any deficiencies or anything like that while you were on that journey where you were?
No, never. Actually, never. The thing is, I've never been a healthy eater. I'm trying to be now. But I've always been somebody who eats too much sugar and too much bread, and and too much fried food and too much bad food. It's just always been who I am. Too much I comfort eat. As I said, it's actually been a lot. You can comfort eat as a vegan quite happily now. I never had any health problems, aside from the ones I would have been having anyway. I suspect, from eating because sugar isn't vegan and bread isn't vegan, and anything, and you can fry something regardless of where it comes from. And these days there are plenty of absolutely delicious cakes and puddings and desserts and food that is fundamentally not great for you, that is made in a plant-based way. So, but I never had any health issues that resulted from having a plant-based diet ever. I was relatively, and still am relatively healthy. I took vitamin supplements to be on the safe side,
Okay.
which I think is a sensible thing to do. But I think it's a sensible thing for anyone to do, regardless of what your diet is.
Yeah, no, the only reason I ask is I had a friend of mine while I was obviously down in Leicester running my business who worked for me for a while, and he went on the same journey down to down the vegan path. He was quite a health fanatic, so really was in the gym doing lots, and body was his temple and all the rest of it. And out of the blue, I had a message from him. Basically saying his body was really struggling because he couldn't produce a certain amino acid or something like that. Obviously, being a gym goer, he needed to eat this. And he approached me to ask me whether or not, because he knew what I did and the meat that we would produce from, for example, the deer, the venison and all the rest of it, he was like, is there any way that you can send this down to Leicestershire? And this was, again, 15 years down the line. And that was, I was interested, and I kind of tried to poke a bit more into that, and he just kind of said that it is basically his body, or he couldn't get the correct amount of whatever it was, the amino acid or something like that from the food that he was eating. He was probably down a slightly different line with the diet, trying to be super healthy, so avoiding the sugars and the carbohydrates and all the rest of it. But I just found that really interesting, hence the reason for asking that question.
Well, my younger brother is a vegan chef. He's a vegan
Okay.
food expert, which is another reason I went vegan. Although because it took him a while to make that jump, actually, because we have the same background. But he had his wife was vegan, and for a while, and she kind of helped him and encouraged him, and he's incredibly into his food, and he's the fittest person I know. He's the healthiest person I know. Like he does like London to Paris bike rides, and is generally in really good nick as it is. And there's a science to all this. You can be incredibly healthy and fit and stacked and have a plant-based diet, and you can be a big fat blob and have a plant-based diet, and and both of those things can be true of somebody who eats a meat and dairy rich diet. I don't know the
100%.
science of it, but it's it almost feels like those issues are are to the side. Although, as you say, you know somebody who struggled, and there's a lot of psychological and medical reasons as well. Like, I'm sure you can replace most of the protein you get from meat in other ways, but if you don't do that and you don't sort of look at it scientifically, you're doing lots of exercise, you're going to be in trouble. The psychology of it is very interesting as well. For example, people with eating disorders or with psychological dependencies on food will always struggle and probably shouldn't look at having restricted diets, because there is a huge psychological tangle there with food that is best not to lob another problem into.
Of course, absolutely. It was quite interesting, actually. Right at the beginning there, you were saying your mum used to make you macaroni and cheese and then put bacon bits for the others, and it was obviously, I think it's always, that's one of the guilty pleasures, isn't it? It's the smell of bacon. It
is, yeah.
It certainly has that lure, and I remember many friends at uni that were vegetarians apart from when there was bacon available, and suddenly all of a sudden it doesn't count. It's like, well,
but bacon has been the last fake meat to crack, because sausages cracked that years ago, There's loads of good sausages, of good vegetarian sausages. I mean, no one's claiming these things are as good, obviously, but there are plenty of decent vegetarian sausage options that taste as good as a cheap sausage with meat in it. There are chicken replacements for years now. There are plenty of good chicken replacements, soy-based beef replacements, and stuff that sometimes if you didn't know, you wouldn't even realize if they're cooked in certain kind, if they're in a curry or something. Bacon has always been the one that was hardest to do, and recently there has been some good bacon. There's a company called This Is, and they do like this is chicken, this is bacon, this is whatever, and they do a very good bacon, a very good vegan bacon. If you've never eaten bacon, for example, like my partner, she loves it. If you have eaten bacon, you know it's not really bacon, but it is close enough that if you were having a craving, it would scratch the itch. It smells like Frazzles, but
Okay.
But that works. It does work. It's the consistency though. The consistency is the hardest thing to get right, and they've cracked a lot of it. Some stuff they still haven't. Cheese is really difficult. It's one of the things I miss the most. Really good cheeses is something I missed when I was vegan. And there's never been a truly satisfying equivalent for that. There are vegan cheeses. Some of them are fine. Some of them are quite nice if you kind of accept them as a sort of nut paste as opposed to a cheese. They have it on their own terms. They're a nice sort of cashew pate. But
I was going to say, I suppose if you leave the omnivore position and you go into being a vegan, it's probably very difficult, and I can now understand. I always understand why there's all of these things that they call bacon, chicken substitute, because it's probably very difficult to actually just go, do you know what, I'm going to just eat nuts and mushrooms all day long, and that's probably tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, if you've been raised eating meat, and also, like, the thing is, no one is arguing that this stuff doesn't taste nice. This is one of the things that is one of the biggest things if you turn vegan or turn vegetarian, is you're turning off food that you've eaten your entire life and that tastes good, and that we as a culture are very good at preparing and cooking.
Yes.
Right, we've got thousands of years of learning how to cook a side of beef, and thousands of years of learning how to smoke meat, and a 20th century worth of building in foreign culture, food from other cultures, and incorporating it with British produce to create delicious things. And just going, oh, I don't want those anymore. You still want them. They're still you never said they don't taste nice, which is why I always think the most disingenuous argument you hear when people talk about veganism, especially my brother came up with these vegan wings. They were made of jackfruit.
Okay.
Which has got a very meaty consistency, and he kind of created this. He was trying to create a fried chicken feel, and through spices and marinades and crumbs and stuff, and he put in a sugarcane stick in the middle that acted like a bone, like a chicken wing, so you could pick it up. Piers Morgan, he had him on Piers Morgan's show, and Piers Morgan came out with this massive diatribe of why would anyone who's vegan want a fake bone in their food, and why would you want food that looks and feels like meat when you profess to not want to eat meat. And it misses the point entirely. The point is that you're trying to trick yourself into thinking you're eating meat. You're trying to get the experience of eating meat and the textures and the flavors that you've been used to your entire life, and that are indisputably delicious and satisfying. So of course you'll want to try and replicate them. And I think going, why on earth would a vegan want something that looks and feels like meat, is completely the wrong question, because it's to me it's really obvious why you would. It's different if you've never eaten meat. If you're somebody who's been vegetarian since they were very young, and because they don't like the idea of flesh, for example. My partner doesn't like the idea of eating flesh. She associates it with her own flesh and with her pets, and doesn't like the idea of eating something that was ever alive, in which case eating meat substitutes still feels weird to her. But if you've grown up eating meat, I don't see I totally understand why you'd want to eat something that looks and tastes exactly like it, but doesn't have any of the ethical problems that put you off it in the first place.
I can see that. So I get it completely. Obviously, I know in the family it's like there's been comments that my wife would have put out there once upon a time was, if I wasn't the hunting and bringing the food home and knowing exactly where it came from and filling the freezer, then her attitude is, well, she wouldn't eat meat because, exactly as you said at the beginning, the industrialization process of it. And I don't agree with some of it as well. It's I work on some of these chicken farms and things like that, and you see it and you're just like, you wouldn't want to eat chicken. It's absolutely horrendous.
And of course, it's a scale, isn't it? It's a spectrum, because on one end you have what is essentially putting an animal into a factory process, and the worst it can be, and the stuff that results in the cheapest of the cheap chicken nuggets, and then on the other hand, you have kind of a small slaughterhouse that does things in small ways, as ethical as you can, and then everything in between, or some, actually no, the far end is somebody like you who's going out and hunting, but in the middle there's a whole gradient of things, and you have to sort of work out where your tolerance is.
And I think that's the thing. I think the problem we have is, and you touched on it earlier, with the population has got so great, and the demand for cheap, easy access food, which literally is always available, is what drives this machine to keep going. You mentioned 200 years ago, obviously. Well, it's not even that far back. You just have to think the end of the Second World War. I think we had Dig for Britain, which was basically everybody converted their gardens to allow them to grow vegetables. Nowadays, no, not many people grow vegetables. Nobody's really got a garden anymore.
No, it's it would be lovely to live in a world where you keep your own chickens, and all your eggs come from your own chickens, and every once in a while, you decide one of those chickens is probably getting on a bit and it's time, but it's had a good life, and that sort of thing, and you grow your own veg, and that's all lovely, but it's all the darling buds of May, and it's not how we live now.
Society doesn't support it.
No.
It's like I was flying back last night, and I flew over London, and I've got a fantastic photo of it, and you just look at the sprawl and you're just like, there is no way that London didn't look like this 100 years ago. It was tiny, and there was lots of green places, and it's now just a monster that keeps growing, and you think how much food has to go through there. I think the big problem we do have, though, which needs addressing in this country, is our wastage issue, because it doesn't matter whether you eat meat or whether you're a plant-based diet. The amount of waste that seems to just be generated through the process of supermarkets not selling it, blah blah blah, all of those things, it's crazy, and I think that drives this supply chain, because people just don't have it doesn't matter which way you're looking at it, there's no responsibility for food.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing argument in my house of me going through the cupboard, the fridge, and going, you bought this a month ago and it's gone off and you didn't eat it. This is that like, and getting really annoyed about it. And my partner's always going, you love it, don't you? You love going through the fridge and finding stuff that's out of date. You really get a kick out of it, don't you? And maybe she's right. I don't know, but it is like that. It is one of, I think something that is quite almost unforgivable as a society, the amount of food we throw away, like when in a world full of hungry people. There's a philosophy called veganism. I don't know if you're aware of veganism, which is,
okay, explain. Do you want to explain that one?
So veganism basically means you eat stuff that would have been thrown away. You eat surplus food.
Okay.
And that means that everything you eat is technically ethical, because if you don't eat it, no one's going to eat it. And you get a lot of people who, in America, it's known as dumpster diving, but it's essentially getting stuff like robbing the stuff out the back of the supermarket that's just been thrown away. Stuff that is perfectly edible, but because of the regulations around food, means that it can't be sold anymore. And people who have vegan diets, basically they will eat meat because this particular bit of meat isn't going to be eaten is going to waste. And I genuinely believe that there is no such thing as an unethical way of eating. The most unethical food item in the world is the one that's never eaten.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
if you're eating something that is never gonna, if you're eating something that otherwise would have been wasted, then all other considerations I think are off, because you may as well. The word I'm not comfortable with something enduring a mechanized death for my dinner. I'm even less comfortable with something enduring a mechanized death that then creates something that is never eaten at all.
And I think I again there would agree with you. We're very lucky up here in Scotland. So our co-op will produce, if there's a load of stuff that doesn't get sold, they actually put it into like a food bank outside the school. So it's not, you don't have to do the dumpster diving. You can go there and it's there for people to take. So it is really nice that virtually nothing from our little local shop is ever wasted. If it gets reduced, it gets sold. And if people don't take it, then it just makes its way up outside the school. And you'll always see a post on one of the Facebook pages going, oh, there's a load of this, or there's this, and that's available. And I think the next plan we're actually going to do, as part of the estate kind of thing, once it's all working and up and running and I've got all my necessary tickets, is we're actually going to supply into that. We're going to put a cold box out, and sort of once a month, we're going to pack it full of just venison mince, a high grade mince that if you want it, you can take it away. There's nothing. The nice bit about it is it's sustainable, it's local, it's the deer have to be managed for us. It's not a mechanical process, that there is nothing. The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy. Through the Academy, shooters, hunters, and those involved in the use of firearms can gain an in-depth and unique level of training that enables them to shoot better, behave more effectively in the field, up their strike rates, as well as learning new skills. Crucially, those new to deer stalking, the Academy also offers the Proficient Deer Stalker Certificate Level 1, the PDS-1, a deer management certificate that is nationally recognised and accredited both by LANTRA and UK Rural Skills. Visit the Shooting and Hunting Academy to find out more. Let's get back to the show. There's nothing to prey on the deer because we don't have those big animals, and reintroducing those big animals would, like wolves and lynxes, will just be that's a whole other topic we could talk about. But it means that the deer at some point has to be taken off the land, because otherwise the numbers increase and you get starvation, and nobody wants to see an animal suffering. So if we manage our population correctly, then we can put that product out for people to take away, and actually, if they're struggling, because in this day and age, we've talked about this, even meat or vegan or high quality plant-based products are expensive. So it's you end up pushing the population to eat the cheapest food if they can't afford to buy it. So my sort of plan was to say, well, here's a high quality product and it's free.
And I honestly can't. I know people who would object to that on animal rights grounds, and I think, and I can't. And whilst I'm not going to say I necessarily disagree with like that, it's like they're welcome to that opinion and I understand it. For me there, I mean, like I said, this is on a spectrum, this is on a gradient. I don't agree with having hard lines on these issues, and I would have no problem with that. Blimey, if I lived in a culture, if I lived in a community where everyone's eating like free range, sustainably farmed, roaming animals that are culled ethically, and we know that there is no that there is no chemical involvement in their diets, and there's no chemical treatment of the meat, and like that'd be amazing. I'd love that. Everybody would be eating healthier, more sustainably. There is literally no downside. Unfortunately, it is not. And the one big question that always comes up whenever you talk about any form of industry in the 21st century is, how does it scale? And unfortunately, that doesn't scale. And it
doesn't scale, and it's a really sad thing. And yet we have it throws that topic up. We have the largest deer population ever in the UK at the moment. And you know what the worst part about that is? Most of the meat that's produced from those deer populations, unfortunately, because it doesn't make it to the supermarket shelves, because it doesn't tick the boxes for the supermarkets, we actually ship it out of this country and it goes into Europe.
That's ridiculous, and it's such a weird. Again, it's socialization. We're not socialized to eat venison. We
No.
don't. It's not part of our diet if we're used to eating it. Because and yeah, Scandinavia, it is an incredibly common meat.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's such an odd thing, and that's the thing that's the stuff that really depresses me.
Right, so I'm going to pull us back in because obviously
Mm.
you mentioned at the beginning you've come out of that vegan brand. It's I hate it. It's a label, isn't it? And it's one of those. It's a weird one that everybody throws out. I'm a vegan, but you've come out of that. What was the reasoning that you kind of pulled yourself back out of that and went, let's be back to being an omnivore?
It was lockdown, and at the time, my ex-wife had she had a medical condition that meant that a diet that she had a kidney condition that was meant that um a diet with a lot of meat in it was going to be beneficial for her. So and also that was a weird time for everybody, and I think everyone fell back on comfort and the stuff that they enjoy, and you kind of like we were leading such restricted lives that loosening some of the self-imposed restrictions was a little treat for everybody, and I just kind of fell off the wagon. It was easier because my partner had to have a meat diet to also eat the same food as her, and we looked into kind of recipe boxes that could list where their ingredients came from, so we were getting really good, sustainable, high quality ingredients, and I just fell off the wagon, and then, as with any wagon, once they start rumbling off, they're a lot harder to catch up. And I think that's true of almost anything you ever do. Like it's much harder to start a diet again once you've it's hard. It's easy enough to start a diet the first time, but once you give it up, it's much harder to get back on it. Same with going to the gym. It's the same with almost anything that makes you feel like you're restricting yourself a bit. You get out of practice. And since then, I just haven't got back into it. Like I said, my fiance is vegetarian. And we don't really have meat in the house. Occasionally, me and my stepdaughter will treat ourselves when my partner's working a night and working in a night shift because she works behind a bar, and we'll get a takeaway for just the two of us. But broadly we eat vegetarian at home, and we eat very well. And I never really particularly feel like I'm missing out on anything. And we have nice food. But again, recipe boxes are great. Recipe boxes are really good because they usually track where the ingredients come from. You're getting high quality stuff, and you're being given just enough of it to cook the meal that you want to cook. So there's no waste. I'm a really big believer in them. They're not cheap though, which is one of the problems. I'm lucky in that I can afford to get recipe boxes. But and then when I'm on the road as a comedian, I take it on a case by case basis.
I know you have to, because actually it's really interesting because it is difficult, and I travel, and I know what it's like. You could be on the road for hours to get to a gig or a location, and all of a sudden you get there and the menu is pretty limited.
Yeah, it can be really bad. Service stations are dreadful as well, unless you're going through to Tibet, or is it Tibet?
Tibet, yeah.
Yeah, or Gloucester, which anyone who does a lot of driving knows are the best service stations in the world. But generally speaking, yeah, it's hard to have a good diet on the road. It's hard to have a good diet of any sort on the road. So I mostly, I don't eat meat a lot. I try and make sure when I do, I eat stuff that is worth it. And I always kind of think to myself, well, this cow would have been happy with this. Like, this is delicious, which is very frivolous, and is the kind of thing that makes militant vegans furious if you say it to their face. But then again, they tend to be quite a joyless bunch.
That's the topic, isn't it? I think a lot of people can be a vegan, but they're not there to force the matter home. And it's the same with everything, but it just seemed to be that there's that small minority, I think it goes with everything, that militant group that really do want you to know that you're doing everything wrong. But unfortunately, they seem to shout the loudest, and they seem to put themselves out there, don't they?
Well, yeah, but then again, that's evangelism for you, isn't it? And it also, I kind of, you kind of think, well, I don't think you're wrong. It's like I'm the preaching, it's preachy and it's irritating, but it's also not, like, most of the arguments are correct, and or at least I resonate. And it's that thing where you kind of go, evangelical Christians have a responsibility to preach at you, because as far as they're concerned, if they don't convert you, you are going to hell. So they're doing everything they can to make sure that to save your soul, and they genuinely think that that like it's an absolute tragedy if you don't listen. And I think for a lot of animal rights activists and the more militant end of veganism, it is that, like, they really they're not just doing it to annoy people, they're doing it because they really believe it, and that they have right on their side. And it's off-putting. It is off-putting.
It's a weird one there. It really is, because I think obviously there'll be a lot of people that listen to this that are very much the hunting world and things like that, as well as people that have different walks of life, and we get people all over the world that will be listening to this. I know that because I look at the stats, and it'll be interesting to see feedback that comes from it. But I think, yeah, as we say, you can look at it from both angles, and I completely respect the angle that you came in at, and it's not, you're not trying to drive it home. Yes, as you say, you've come away from the vegan, you're still probably in the vegetarian group now. Would you deem yourself
mostly
as?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I don't have a hard and fast rule, so I don't put a label on it. I would say I have an 80% vegetarian diet. And if I have something that isn't vegetarian, it tends to be either as a real treat, like something really nice in a restaurant, or because the alternatives are really bad, and I may as well go. And like, I'm not going to eat the hummus sandwich, which is with the crust cut off, that I can see curling in the corner of the cafe, because actually, do you know what? I'll have the BLT, but it's so, or I'll have like a funeral I went to last week. The vegetarian options for the wake were terrible. They were really, they weren't appetizing, and then there was a really delicious looking sausage roll, and these lovely, they clearly home baked, clearly, like, made properly, and it's like, that looks absolutely delicious. I feel like I'm gonna have that. So I reckon I have an 80% vegetarian diet, probably about a 40 or 50% vegan diet. Like, we don't have cow's milk at home. That's an interesting one, actually, because that when I went back to eating meat and dairy, I suddenly found cow's milk to be too rich. And it's not because I disagree with drinking cow's milk. It's because that's the one thing that I don't really like anymore, because I
Okay.
got used to not drinking it. And now, even a glass of semi-skimmed milk feels a bit like drinking cream. It's just, I find it a bit too heavy and a bit too sickly. And there's no sort of value judgment there. It's just a preference thing. And that I find really interesting. So I tend to have plant-based milks because the actual milk has become unpalatable for some reason. It's the one thing that got left behind when I returned.
That's really interesting. It's always interesting to see how different people have different ways. And as you just said, I'm literally drinking a cup of tea here, and I think we joked just before we came on air. You were making a cup of tea and you went with oat milk, and I'm drinking a cup of tea with full fat organic milk, because I have a thing. Even I like milk, but I need to know that the milk I'm drinking is not something that's stuck in a barn that's being fed the wrong type of
Mm.
food. And I will drink organic milk. I'll pay that little bit extra, because at least I know that my cow is getting something decent to eat. That's the most
Yeah,
important part.
and I love cheese. I really do love cheese. And I never buy cheap cheese. I never buy. I always go. I'm always looking for really good brands, stuff that tells you about where it comes from, and for that, always, that's always the nicer stuff as well. Like, that's always good. The
Of
nice thing
course,
about those products is, because they're seen and marketed as premium, so they have to taste premium too.
it is crazy though, isn't it? I think if you strip the labels away from everything we've talked about, the the mechanization of the entire food industry in the developed world has basically produced an animal that just has to be fed. It doesn't matter whether it's manufacturing plants or whether it's putting plant-based materials through there, lab-grown protein, or we're putting animals through the system, because we need to produce so much food to sustain this ever-growing population that seems to be out of control. We're running out of resources in many ways, so we're just filling it. You hit the nail on the head earlier on, the talk about sugar and things like that, and I think that's the thing, to make this food that is on the cheaper end work. You pump it full of sugars, and that can even be in the same case as a really poor quality piece of chicken. You make it plump by filling it with water and salts and sugars to get that same effect. But it's that ever growing need to keep supplying food to people.
Yeah, and the problem is that like that kind of that economic reality and that capitalist reality is very prevalent in the United States. We've all seen stories about, chlorinated chicken and things like that. And food standards are much lower there, and they are much more based around supply and demand and around the kind of economic realities. And if you've ever had what Americans call cheese, you will understand that the quality is not high. And the eggs, if you look at how eggs are produced in America, eggs in America have to be kept in the fridge.
Yes,
because the way they're treated removes the protection that is naturally on an egg.
I think it just makes me smile, because every time I have this conversation, my mind automatically jumps to the films like The Matrix, where they're sitting there in the real world and they're eating a bowl of nutrient or whatever it is, that snot, like amino acids, and then it flies off to Wall-E, the next film, where literally the world is run by one big supermarket and everybody's drinking a shake, and it's just like, is that where we're heading at the end of the day? It's almost to that point, isn't it, where literally it doesn't matter, as long as you get it in a juice form, that's it, that's all you need.
Yeah, depressingly, I think there are elements of reality in those nightmarish dystopian ideas. I think there are probably elements that we will be moving towards. It's like I'm just going to nip down the advert market, so I can watch some adverts, because that'll by doing that I'll get enough Jeff Bezos points in my account in order to buy today's protein shake.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's a really scary thought that actually, there, like yourself, you say, I go out and I buy a quality piece of cheese because that's what I want. But you're getting to that point where literally we could end up, and I think it's already been in the press and things like that, about lab grown meats and lab grown proteins, and you're just like, wow, this is getting scary now, because suddenly, all of a sudden, the cheaper end of the food range, doesn't matter whether it's the plant-based, like the hydroponic side of things, or whether they're just going to grow the proteins. This could become actually food that people are eating, and then there is no responsibility we don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, and I love the idea of what you're doing. I love the idea of being really connected to the source of the food we're eating, and to understand every step of the process. And I agree, if you're going to eat meat, you should you should be prepared to go out and punch a boar in the face. Like I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't look very healthy. But
I wouldn't do that. But it's that idea to be able to say, well, even if you have the responsibility, I can. Yeah, I get blood on my hands, and I'm sure there'll be a militant vegan that might listen and give me a load of grief about it. But the thing I can say is that everything from that animal, and I have done it. I've taken a deer, I've shot the deer, I've processed the skin and turned it into a rug. I've taken the bones and I've fed my dogs. I've taken anything else out of it that I can use. I rendered all the fat out of it to make tallow, and we ate the entire deer. And any waste that came from it, any offal, I placed back out into the environment for the other scavengers to eat. So in many ways, I can say, well, there's 100% traceability on that.
Yeah, completely. And and there are vegans who'd have a problem with it, and like you say, but I don't think I ever could, because it feels I don't know, it feels like a true way to live.
And not everybody can do it, and I don't want everybody to do it, but
Mm,
it's one of those things that my process is, as long as I've taken somebody out and educated them and shown them how it works, I'm happy for them to buy the meat off me or to be part of the process. But I think that's really important. But I think we touched on it a few times. It's taking responsibility. If you can't take the responsibility, but you're going to shout at everybody and tell them that vegans are all
mm.
stupid or vegetarians are all stupid, and you're going to tuck into a cheap McDonald's burger, well, actually, you'd probably be better off eating the vegetarian option, because you shouldn't be eating that meat burger,
Mm.
because you haven't taken any responsibility for the process of that product.
I also think like everyone should be shown a slaughterhouse and go, yeah, this is the industrial reality of what you're eating. Just so you know, just so you're aware of it.
I,
Do with that
I,
information what you like.
No, and
Yeah.
and actually, do you know, I think it's really interesting, that topic you mentioned there, because a friend of mine's a teacher, and she showed children about things that she's done, like the hunting, and she got hauled over the coals about it, because you can't show children where product comes from or where things come from. So my daughter would take into school like a pheasant wing and a deer antler and a foxtail, and people
Mm.
would ask questions. We're in a rural community, so it's not too bad. But somebody said, well, you could never do that in like an inner city school. It's like, but actually, I think once upon a time at school, children were taught what animals
Mm.
became, but we've taken that, we've removed
Mm.
that, and you ask a small child, what's that, and they, oh, my meat just comes on a plastic tray. And I think that's
Yeah.
always the comment, that it's that there's no connection.
I mean, maybe, I mean, I grew up in rural Leicestershire in the 80s, so maybe I've got a and I lived in a farming community, not particularly picturesque one, but I did grow up in the countryside, so I kind of do have a sort of idea of this. But there is a famous saying, never ask how the sausage is made. And it's a good metaphor for a lot of things, but it's also a good literal truth.
Yeah, and I get it. I completely get it. And I think that's just one of the things. I think the disconnect, it doesn't matter whether you eat meat or you don't eat meat, but the disconnect of how that meal is turned up on your plate,
Mm.
ignorance is bliss. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of people don't actually care. They'll eat it. And that's the
Yeah.
thing.
And then I mean, and we're kind of going around in circles, but it does bear also mentioning a lot of people don't have any choice, because
Yes.
that's the food they can afford, and that's the food that and that is the most economic way to feed us. I'm feed a family. I'm very lucky. I've got a small family. I do all right for myself. My partner works as well. We have part-time custody of one times teenage girl who we have every other week. Yeah, we don't. It's easy for us to pick and choose, and easy for us to buy to eat well and to buy good produce. I have the luxury that I can do that. And
Yep.
but there are families that like growing up, my family couldn't do that. Growing up, my parents had to feed a family of five on a truck driver's diet, which is on a truck driver's wages, which is not an easy thing to do. And I'm pretty sure my mum was never really considering the origin of the cheapest sausages in Asda
Yeah, no,
that she was going to make a
yeah,
casserole out of.
I
So
get you. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think we could go round and round with this, but it's
yeah.
really interesting to have had your chat, and to see where you obviously went to the vegan route. You've come away from it. What's your what let's have a just throw the last one out there. What's the future for you? What's sort of the plan? Are you going to try and go back down the vegan, or just going to stay on the vegetarian line?
I would like to think I would go back to being vegan one day. Because like I said, I know the arguments and I agree with them. And it is a constant sort of disappointment with myself of knowing these things and acting counter to them anyway. I've always thought one day I will finally take the plunge and I'll eat my last steak and have my last cheese sandwich. And but but I try not to torture myself about it. Life is difficult enough as it is. I do really, really want to make sure that I eat sustainably and that I eat well, and that I know what I'm putting into my body and I know where it comes from. And if all that happens the rest of my life is I go further and further down that line and I understand that, then I won't, then, I won't feel ashamed at the pearly gates. But I still feel that I still feel a little bit of a hypocrite because I do agree with these things, and I do think you should be vegan, frankly. A friend of mine, a comedian, Stuart Goldsmith, incredible comedian. He's a climate change specialist, comedian, and he always says that um, the most valuable thing you can do for the environment, and I'm nicking his joke here, but please go and watch Stuart Goldsmith. He's amazing. The most valuable thing you can do for your environment is be vegan. Please be vegan. I want you to be vegan. I want you to be vegan. The reason I want you to be vegan is because I'm not. I really like eating meat, and if you do it all, then I can feel better about it. And I kind of feel that I really sympathise with that point of view.
Yeah, and I suppose the way our world is growing and changing, then everything has its place. It's really interesting to get a chat with somebody that's been there and has gone down that route. You're not a militant vegan. We've had a very nice talk about it. And yeah, I think yeah, it's really interesting, and it's really nice to see that you're going full circle.
Yeah, and the one thing I think it's important to take away from these discussions is the importance of nuance and the importance of understanding. To have warmth and understanding and nuance. These aren't black and white issues. There is a black and white way of looking at it, but I think it's reductive. I think these aren't black and white issues at all. I think they're an issue where it's okay to find your speed. Like I said, these things are a spectrum, and you don't have to rush to one end or the other. And you don't have it's a direction of travel. To be broadly doing good, broadly eating the right things, broadly being sustainable, and then if you occasionally take the step back and give in to your craving for a Big Mac, you know, you can let yourself off the hook once in a while. All things in moderation. It's about the direction of travel. It's about being aware. You don't need to be preachy about it. You have to understand the nuance of the issues. You have to do your own research and find where on that spectrum you're comfortable being. And that is constantly the process that I'm doing and what I'm trying to find.
Absolutely, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, because yeah, and looking from my side, not everybody has to be the great white hunter. You can still do. You could be a vegan and come out and still cold ear. I do know of one, because they know that process needs to be done. Yet for them, their main food source, they still work down that route, but they will eat the sustainable meat that they produce. And it's just, yeah, it's a really interesting place. So yeah, it's not I could stand next to you on the train and we are just two people at the end of the day. And it's not that you've got to ram it down somebody's throat that I'm a meat eater and you're a vegetarian. It's just you have a conversation, and when you come to have dinner at the you eat slightly different foods.
Well, this is a conversation between somebody who understands the sustainable food and understands in a very direct way the link between the animal in front of them and the meal on their plate, which is you, and me as somebody who has done a lot of research and tries to understand that as well, and tries not and is slightly uncomfortable about the idea of something, as I said right at the beginning, being killed for my dinner, right? And that's that conversation we're having. Put this conversation between somebody who's a militant animal rights expert and somebody who and a multi-billionaire who owns a network of incredibly unethical animal treatment.
Yeah, slaughterhouses, basically.
Yeah. And see what their conversation's like, because we can find common ground because we're both looking at nuance. Whereas you'd be interested to find out what that conversation will be like between people who one of which is making money and hang the consequences and sort of not glorying, but is pushing an industrialized process, and somebody who's absolutely rejecting any of that process, and see what they talk about, because that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, and trust me, if I get the opportunities, that's the route I will go, because it's a very, that you've hit the nail on the head. Exactly that. And unfortunately, money makes the world go round in some cases, and they don't care, because
Hmm.
that's why they are where they are. And the ones that shout loud because they have their beliefs, unfortunately, will never change the system, because
Yeah.
the system carries on. It's a big machine that just keeps on moving.
Yeah, I'm more sympathetic to somebody somebody who is irritating but passionate about what they believe in than I am to somebody who has making money as the most important thing in the process. But that's my speed.
No, absolutely. So I think I'm not gonna we'll not carry on stirring the
Yeah.
pot. But thank you ever so much for giving me some time to have a chat about it. It's been hopefully a bit of an eye opener for anybody listening, and they might take something from this. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. And also, please come and see me on tour if I
Oh
can
yeah,
get
no
that in.
worries. Yeah, we you can throw that in. Tell them where you're on tour,
Uh,
and I'm sure people will come and have a watch.
I'm doing a show about Britpop. It's called the Britpop Hour. Well, the Britpop show. The Britpop Hour was at the Edinburgh Fringe, and now it's a full 90-minute show. It's me talking about Britpop. I am not preaching about sustainable food at all at any point during this show. I'm mostly just doing jokes about Jarvis Cocker.
Fantastic.
I'm in next show is in Milton Keynes on the 20th of March, and then I'm in Milton Keynes, Leicester, Bristol, Bath, Southampton, Andover, Guildford, Norwich, Tiverton, Birmingham, Shrewsbury, Southport South, Sheffield, Leeds, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Newcastle, Chelmsford, Hull, and Tunbridge Wells between now and the 14th of May.
I am sure there are people listening that will come along, and potentially you'll get some people that want to have a chat and go, I listened to you on a podcast by some bloke called Gibbon.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to them as long as they're paid to get in.
Superb. Well, thanks very much, Mark, and thanks for the time, and hopefully yeah, you have a good show, and you'll get a few more people coming to watch it.
Brilliant. I'd love that. But thank you very much. This has been really fun.
Cheers. Well, thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I didn't delay deliberately in getting this podcast out, but unfortunately, you will have missed his tour, which I believe ended in May. But hopefully, it's opened some questions up, and we can all have a discussion about it. I think when the word vegan comes up, people get quite defensive. They get defensive, we get defensive as hunters, but it's obviously one of those things that actually there are a lot of people out there that have different opinions, and it's worthwhile sitting down and having a chat with them. But we're going to leave it there. We're going to Scone. Come and see me if you're there. Come and say hello. I'll be wandering about. Let's see how we get on with this awards and see whether the Outdoor Gibbon podcast is selected. Let's hope it is. But I've got some stiff competition, as I said at the beginning. So we'll let you know on the next one. Have a good one. Catch you soon.